This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.
But also for me, what I have noticed with my work is a lot of people want to escape the human experience. And when you finally realise that it's not something to escape, it's something to be in.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. Get ready to hear moments that will help you to see the world differently and inspire you to become the happiest, healthiest, and kindest version of you.
Dr. Sarah Jane Perri joins me today on the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. She's the founder of Spinal Energetics, her own healing modality, which is taking over the world. She has boundless knowledge of the human experience. I've had her on the show before. It was 5 years ago when I launched Things You Can't Unhear. And I actually listened back to that conversation the other day. Sarah,
was it good?
And it was so good.
Okay, that's good. I've never heard myself. I couldn't think of anything worse than listening to myself.
You can't listen back to yourself?
I've never heard anything I've ever done.
Really?
No. So I've got no idea if I'm improving, if I'm getting worse.
What is that?
No
are you just self-critique? You don't want to self-critique?
Probably. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't like I'll just be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done this. And it will just take me out of the experience next time. So
let's heal that. No.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny. Like as a podcaster, I at the start I was like, I've got to listen back to the episodes. I need to learn how to what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and I self-critique so much that I train myself to identify words that you say in a lazy way. So I was saying "to" instead of "to," and just things like that. And it's such a great way to just fine tune what you're doing. I know it's hard.
I can't do it,
but
you can listen to them for me and give me some tips, maybe.
Well, I think you're doing a great job, considering that the content that you're putting out to the world is getting like billions of views.
I know we're at some kind of billion mark. I don't know what it is. My PR's just gone, but she knows it off by heart. I think it's 3.2 billion, but that was a while ago now. So it's probably more than that now.
17.5 billion now. Why do you think people are so fascinated with the work that you do with Spinal Energetics?
I'd say it's pretty polarizing. So you feel something when you see it. You're either really drawn to it and like, what is this? Really curious, like this is something, it speaks to you. Or it does the complete opposite where you're like, what is this? You're still curious, but maybe it doesn't resonate as much. Maybe it kind of correlates to the ideas about, exorcisms or religion or, is it real? Is it not real? So it hits two ways. It's never neutral. We never have anyone who's kind of like, oh, that's okay. Like it's either really interested or really like, questioning it, which makes sense.
Because we've not seen a lot of what it is. And for people who are listening now and they don't know what Spinal Energetics is, what it looks like in these videos is that people are lying on a bed and their body is almost convulsing in a way that is being moved by energy. So you're treating them, but you're not actually touching them.
Correct.
I'll let you explain it because you probably do a way better job.
No, I think it's good to hear it from you explaining it because, I say the same kind of thing over and over again in different ways where it's like, it's a modality that meets East and Western. It's influenced by energetics such as Reiki. We utilize the energetic centers like they do. It's influenced by chiropractic, network spinal, sacrooccipital technique with the ideas of working with the cranial sacral areas as well as the cerebrospinal fluid areas. So we're working predominantly with the neck and the sacrum because there's a large amount of communication there. And then it's influenced by other things as well, such as my studies in Buddhism and just other ideas that I've had over the years. But yeah, it sounds like it's a bit of a mishmash of things, but it's not really that. It's more of a synthesis where they all agree, where they all can come together and kind of beautifully assist in this way that hasn't really been seen before. So
when I interviewed you last time 5 years ago, you were practicing network chiro.
Yeah.
And I said to you, what's the difference? Just before you recorded, I'm like, what's the difference between Spinal Energetics and network chiro? And you're like, well, network chiro wasn't going into the field.
Yeah.
Explain what the field is for people who don't know.
It's a good question. Yeah. It's hard to explain with words.
Energetic field is what we're referring to.
I feel like whenever I try to explain it with like kind of the mental or logical way of doing it, it's still hard to kind of make sense of. What I suggest doing for most people is go and feel it, go and experience it, because once you've experienced it, it makes a lot more sense to you than it ever will with me kind of, describing it with words. But essentially, we believe that there's layers coming off the body. We believe there's layers that connect to what the root causation of your tension patterns are in the actual physical spine. We believe that things occur in the field first and then show up in the body. So if you work within the field, you are actually making or assisting with transformation that's, I guess, with the innate intelligence of the body, and as well as, consciousness and other areas. So it's Dr. Joe Dispenza probably is the best person of our time to talk about the quantum
so well,
and the field. But again, you hear him speak and you're impressed by it, but until you actually do one of his advanced retreats, you're like, okay, this is what he means. And there's a whole bunch of different ways of getting into the field. Spinal energetics isn't the only way. Joe Dispenza is not the only way. There's, you can touch on it with meditation. You can touch on it with yoga. You can touch on it with, other different modalities. But with spinal energetics, what our main goal is, or our main objective is to connect people back to themselves by working with their own energetic field and their own innate intelligence, which might be different to say something like Kundalini activation, which is where the practitioner is transmitting something through them they believe that's then healing the person or activating a Kundalini awakening within the person. We don't necessarily believe that with what the work we do. We have the philosophy that we're working with the person's own field, their own life, almost like a fingerprint. Like, what have they gone through in their life? What's their experiences? What's unique to them that we can connect to? And we also find the areas that have ease and connection, not the areas that need, that are the problem areas. We look for the areas that are working well, connect deeper with those, and then when you bring more breath and more connection to those areas, the body already knows how to bring safety into those other areas that have felt disconnect.
All right, so tell me what you're healing within people. So who has come in recently that you've seen a really big shift in? What type of conditions are you seeing a lot of?
We can assist with a lot of conditions, and at the end of the day, it's not really us doing anything. I just want to clarify that. So it doesn't matter whether you see me or any of my other practitioners. It's not us that's special. It's the work that's special. So the work is something that's, I guess, a dance between the practitioner, facilitator, as well as the client. It's a very empowering experience. So instead of you seeing, like, say, a traditional practitioner where they're fixing you, it's a much more like conjoined effort. And it's not a passive session as well, which you would have experienced in your time as well, because I was still doing a bit of spinal when I was seeing you too. So you can't be passive in it. You've got to experience it. You've got to be active in it. It's almost like you're dancing together. But we've seen a whole bunch of different things. We look at people who have been in physical pain, who have tried many different things, and it's, maybe it's not worked, maybe it's not helped. So we're kind of like a last resort. We've had other things where people are having like autoimmune issues, and what's the root causation of that? What's really occurring there as well? It's mainly females who are people pleasing and who are giving way too much in their life. So if you can work with that level of consciousness and the emotional attachment to that and the story attached to that and the perspective attached to that, then the body can find safety and then essentially heal itself. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. But again, it's not a miracle. I wish it was, but it's definitely a tool that is assisting many, many people, especially emotionally as well. That's probably the main thing I see. This with collaboration of counsellors, psychotherapists, things like that can really assist people with the physiological response of their trauma, or their experiences in the body, like the fight or flight response. They might rationally understand what's going on, but their body's having an automatic response, like whether it's fight, flight, freeze, whatever it might be. So we can assist with that so that they can, I guess, function in a way that I guess is more optimal for them as a person, and it is contextually relevant.
At what stage of a healing journey are you seeing people come to you? Like, are you a last resort type of a situation where people are like, we have tried everything.
Sometimes.
Please, we need something else out of the medical system that might work for us because nothing else has worked.
Definitely at the start. That was because spinal was quite new. So the only reason people come in is because it was a last resort, which makes sense to me. They're like, we've tried everything and we've heard about you through someone else. So again, it was always word of mouth. I never advertised. That's always a very strong referral point when people are like, you've just got to try this, and when people are, I guess, in essentially a desperate position where they've tried everything and
they're ready and
they're ready.
At that stage
they're just like,
they're open.
Just like, whatever. Yeah. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's amazing how your beliefs will shift when you're the person that's unwell. and what you're willing to try. True. Yeah. So that's been definitely at the start. That was probably more it. But now I'd say we're getting a lot more people where this is the first place they go. Essentially instead of maybe trying, the medical route or pharmaceutical route, maybe there's something that they can assist their body with by regulating through breath or, through the nervous system and altering that way without needing to rely possibly on pharmaceuticals. But again, it's anywhere and everywhere on the journey is what we're seeing currently.
That's good. You're obviously getting a lot more traction. I heard you talk a lot. You work a lot with the younger sort of demographic. And some young guys with mental health issues as well, and mums are sending them in.
Yeah, their mums send them in.
And they're probably pretty pleased when they get to see you and they're like, oh, this isn't bad as I thought it was
going to be. It's so sad. I've had mums show their sons pictures and then they're willing to go in, which I'm not sure what that says, but I don't know what that means.
It's like, you know what, as long as it gets them there and you're helping them, that's
I think
amazing.
It's just about I tend to break the mold in terms of what the expectation of a facilitator looks like as well. So I'm not 70. I'm not sitting in my little chair writing notes about you. Unfortunately, the traditional therapy system has kind of got that stigma attached to it where it doesn't work. You just sit there and talk to someone, they write notes on you, and then you have to bring up everything. Whereas what I love about Spinal is that you don't actually have to talk about anything. The body does the work. And that's something that's almost a relief to a lot of young men as well, especially because it's hard for them to open up. So the fact that they can go somewhere, receive benefits without having to talk necessarily, it's less confronting for them, and less confronting than moving the body even for them. So I think that's why it's appealed to that certain demographic. And also the younger you kind of are, the easier it is to change those patterns. They haven't been there for as long as, say, me or you.
Yeah, that's so true.
So they've got a little bit more, I guess, malleability in that earlier stage to make a difference, like a lot of things, Yeah.
That's so true. What are your thoughts on talk therapy?
Yeah, like coming from, I had an undergrad in psychology, but then I decided to do chiro. So I just did my undergraduate and then I did some further training in holistic counselling. So I definitely think talk therapy has a purpose, 100%. But what I don't think is that it's the only answer for everything. And I think everyone is different. And I also think that going for years in talk therapy, saying the same story over and over again is not essentially beneficial. Psychotherapists I'm a large fan of. I think that they do some really interesting work because they talk about the soul, the spirit. They bring context into your experiences, context into why you might be feeling what you're feeling. And also EMDR therapy is something that I've seen make quite a bit of difference within people.
What's EMDR therapy?
It's basically eye movement desensitization. So there's a belief that the eyes hold the patterning of where trauma stores in the brain. And just through moving the eyes, they can change the response to a trauma or to a stimulus, which is very, very interesting work as well. So we get quite a few referrals from both of those places. But there's definitely a place for talk therapy, but I also think that we're missing a huge part, which is not just the expression of the story. There's something else that needs to be expressed in the body, in the physicality, and in the field as well. That's something that's, I think, missed currently in the Western perspective.
One thing I've learned on my wellness journey is that simplicity is everything, especially when it comes to supplements. That's why I've fallen in love with Kylo Nutrition. They've taken the guesswork out of it all, and instead of juggling 5 different bottles, Kylo gives you that all-in-one support for gut health, sleep, energy, and even glowing skin. Their luxe science-backed super blends are not only delicious, but they're designed to support us without complicating our routine. So whether it's a super greens blend, a plant-based protein, or something to help you wind down, Kylo helps you feel your best from the inside out. And honestly, it's just made wellness feel so effortless. You can check out the full range at kylo.com.au. That's KAILO.com.au. And use the code TYCU for 10% off at checkout and a gift with purchase.
I think you're so right with therapy too, because you're like, there's session after session after session, and it can continue to go for years and years and years. Whereas this is more of a quicker healing modality, isn't it?
Well, I think that's where people get attracted to it. I don't want people to think quick, so therefore it's not got integrity or it's not got depth. It definitely does, but there's an acceleration to it that, especially for people who've just done talk therapy and nothing else. So there's an acceleration in the healing, for the lack of a better word, where they're now blending both mind and body. You know, and the field. Like, so you're going to get a different experience. If you can change your state of consciousness, which is essentially what we're doing with this work, you're going to get a very different transformation than staying in the same state that created the story for you in the first place. And a lot of the time, trauma actually isn't the issue. You know, we could go through the exact same thing and have very different perspectives on that. We've seen that numerous times before, like even COVID, people had very different experiences in that. Some people found it traumatic, other people found it, you know, not so much, depending on their belief system. So it's not the trauma, it's your perception on the trauma. And with this work, you can change and rewrite that belief system, that value system, what happened, why it happened. And by changing that perception, you essentially change the way that it's been placed in your memory, and not just in your memory in your mind, but your body memory.
How interesting. How
absolutely.
It truly is. And I interviewed Kate Malvernon before you. We're at the Kylo Summit right now for everyone listening. This is the third interview for the day.
Yeah.
But, before you, David the Medium, and before that was Kate, and she
I haven't
got
met Kate before.
diagnosed. Amazing, fascinating story, and diagnosed with in 2018 with 6 months to live with a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And instead of going, okay, I've got cancer, I'm going to die, she was like, why did I get cancer?
Yeah, which is it's a scary question, which is why a lot of people won't ask it. You know, and especially when something health-wise happens to you, it's very frightening to think about, why is this occurring to me? Like, what did I do? Like, you know, and essentially there's a balance between questioning, but also a balance of things that aren't necessarily justified and fair in this planet as well. So you've kind of got a balance between the two. But they've done, you know, there are studies out there where they've accidentally told the wrong patient that they have a certain time frame to live, and they actually die and they never had the cancer in the first place. So getting attached to the time frame and being told that time frame isn't necessarily of benefit either. I think it was a Dr. Joe book actually that I'm referring to, where he has studies like this. So it's very, very, very interesting when you're told something, how that belief can then shape your reality too.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting kind of field.
I almost feel like people should never be given a limit.
Yeah.
Sometimes it actually inspires people to go, you know, oh, fuck that, I'm not listening to that, exactly like Kate. She created an Instagram profile. It's called It's Not Kate's Time. Like, that was an affirmation that she put out into the world.
Well, that's her other belief, you know, so that can help in different ways. But I don't want to make it sound like people who haven't been able to, you know, forgo cancer didn't try hard enough. It's not that. But I think that we have to be careful with our words. Our words really do mean something. And, you know, even if you get prescribed a drug, you're more likely to experience the side effects of a drug if they're communicated to you than if you weren't communicated to. So there's something going on there where we link possibility with being told information. So it's just something that we need to be aware of, I think.
What part of the medical system do you think is letting us down at the moment?
Probably emotional care. I think the medical system, in terms of hospitals and in the Western perspective of that, they're very good at emergency medicine. They're very good at, you know, cutting things out if necessary. They're very good at, you know, fixing broken bones and trauma care and things like that. In fact, I think we've got one of the best systems in the world in regards to that. But unfortunately, there is no emotional care. You're treated as literally a meat body or as a number. It's very rare, at least in my experience. You know, I've spent a lot of time in hospitals, and probably the most challenging part wasn't necessarily what I was seeing my mum go through, but the lack of emotional support that's in that environment for what you were going through as either the family member or the patient.
Why do you think that is?
They don't have the time or the funding.
Yeah.
They're also
and they were not taught.
They're not educated. They're not educated that matters. You know, they have the one social worker on the floor. That's that box ticked. But it's a box tick. It's not actually caring. And they're looking at it like their predominant role is to fix whatever's more important in front of them. And they just don't have the time or the ability to prioritise. Also, they're probably burning out just from that, let alone having to give emotional care. But you know, we shouldn't expect our specialists to necessarily, that's my list from my dental appointment, necessarily be able to give that emotional care. But there should be someone in that space that can. Because anyone who's met a specialist, it's very rare that they have that, you know, bedside manner that makes you feel great. And if you do find someone like that, it's very special. You know, Dr. Lynn Burmeister is a fertility specialist in Melbourne. She's probably one of the most amazing specialists in terms of her skill set, but also her emotional skill set. And when you have both of those things, It's something that's rare, unfortunately. And I think if we could make something where people experience both the emotional state being looked after as well as, you know, the physicality, then we'd be doing something of huge benefit for our population.
100%.
Yeah.
Speaking of Lynn Burmeister,
Yeah.
she was my very first guest ever.
Was she
podcast.
really?
Yep. She came on and she shared all of her insights around what she was doing and on the breakthrough stuff with IVF.
Yeah.
But I hear that you're working with her.
Oh, yeah.
Moment,
Oh,
hey?
yeah, I was. So Lynn's been part of my family for a long time. My ex-husband's sister saw Lynn, and so 2 of my godchildren are actually made from Lynn. So I've known Lynn through that. And then, you know, when my ex-husband and I were going through our challenges, I saw both Lynn and Dr. Nick, a urologist, who's also an exceptional specialist in Melbourne. And yeah, I froze my eggs last year with Lynn. You know, I'm getting to the point where I had to think seriously about it, but unfortunately, because of what I'd gone through before, the idea of going back into that system was a challenge. I didn't really want to be poked and prodded again. I didn't really want to have to go through all the hormones again. Fair call. Yeah. So I needed the emotional, you know, state and strength to get back into it. I had to do 4 rounds, so it was a lot. But we got 28 eggs in the end, which is
that's
great.
huge. Yeah.
But still, for, you know, my age gap, that only gives you around 70% chance of 1 live birth. So there's also a bit of a misconception around egg freezing, which is why I'm sharing my story around that as well. It's not as much of a safety as people think if they don't get enough eggs. You really need, so I probably have to do 1 more round by the end of the year just to get true safety, so to speak. They want over 30.
How is your body feeling?
It wasn't great, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think I put on about 7 kilos. Not that it's about that, of course, but it was just the ability to even want to exercise and other things.
The mental state.
The mental state,
as well, right?
everything, and just probably cortisol and just the actual drugs that you're pumping through your system. You know, but you've got to weigh things up sometimes. You know, I was still doing everything else, doing the acupuncture, doing, you know, all the other things that you need to do to help yourself. That's one thing that the fertility world do well, is that they really do blend Eastern and Western far better than a lot of other.
Especially at that centre too, I think.
They really do.
Yeah.
So that was something that I loved to see. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. It's hard. Like, I won't underestimate it in that regard. But do I regret doing it? No. And it's something I possibly would have regretted if I didn't do it. And it was, Lynn made it as seamless as possible. You know, it sounds silly, but the fact that her rooms are pink and, you know, they have life in them makes you feel like
they're not clinical.
Yeah, you're not sick.
Yeah,
you know, there's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, you're doing something that's of benefit to you possibly. So that for me made a difference, and she's always been an inspiration to me from that, in terms of what environment are you setting for the people coming in as well.
I think it's I've spoken to many people who have frozen their eggs and gone through. We had 3 women on the pod recently who all had babies in their hands.
Oh, little babies.
Freezing their eggs, but they'd all done it solo. So
yeah, I'm possibly going to do that. So
and they're so happy. And they said,
if I'm 42
yep,
and I haven't met anyone, that's my cutoff. And I'll do it on my own possibly. I never thought I'd say that, which is so interesting. Yep. If you had asked me that 10 years ago, I'd have said no way.
Well, if you think about how many solo mums are out there, even
I know
ones who have been married and have split from their partners, alone. The partner may have left when the child was
who knows?
Too.
You can't guarantee any of it anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it's something that is in your heart that you truly desire, then why not?
So I might go to Greece or something. Who knows? Sperm donors easier there than in Australia.
Little Greek baby.
Little Mediterranean.
Oppa.
Yeah. Oppa. Yeah, I'd love that. That's all I can do.
We're already speaking the language.
Yeah. She already would love that. So I don't know. You know, my life's pretty hectic as well. And I have a dog and 2 cats, and that's hard. So I can't imagine how hard it is having a baby. But hopefully my ignorance gets me over the line and I do it anyway.
The advice I got from my 3 friends who have now done it solo,
they're like, so 3 of them.
3.
Yeah.
You need to find your village.
Yeah.
It is your friends, your family. One of my friends who has gone solo doesn't have any siblings, and her parents are in their late 70s,
so
I think,
they can't
80s.
help. Yeah.
So they can't really help. So she's literally 2 beautiful friends who are now the aunts who are in the birthing suite with her. They're by her side all the time. They're feeding the baby. They're taking it. But it's beautiful.
So loved.
It is so. It's so loved. Riva is so loved, and just seeing that community that she's created. It's not her blood family, but it's
matter.
now her inner circle
Yeah,
and her
yeah.
village that it's taken to raise this little guy.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's so beautiful to see. Family comes in all different
It
shapes
does.
and forms.
It does. I probably have to start making friends then.
Well, tell me about yourself.
Or
I want
leave-
to know about
or
your personality.
leave my house a bit more often.
I mean, you're on camera, but you don't like to look at it. You're out there. You're speaking to loads of people. How
That
do you
doesn't
feel?
bother me.
Doesn't
No, I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
So like even
Yeah.
with this summit, like this stuff, I love it. Love seeing you guys. Love seeing people like who I actually connect with, you know. But that's not that simple in the general population, and not to sound, you know, judgmental, but it's hard with the things I'm interested in. A lot of people aren't necessarily interested in that, and that's okay. But also I just get overwhelmed a bit because, you know, I feel a lot. So being around a lot of people a lot isn't necessarily giving me energy. Yeah. It looks like I'm having a good time, and I am, but I get very tired after. So even with this whole summit, I'm not nervous about talking in front of 400 people. I'm nervous about the networking drinks tonight where I'm like, oh,
how
God,
interesting.
David, are you going to be there? What time? Can I meet you there? What time can I just stand with you?
I'll hold your
Because,
hand, babe.
yeah, I don't know, like I get a bit nervous. So it's weird. I'm a very comfortable, confident person on one hand, but then on the other hand, I just get a bit
It's
a bit
lot of
overwhelmed.
people in the public eye tend to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I think. And I think when you're delivering your dharma, your purpose, when you're
Hopefully.
talking about your craft and doing the things that you're passionate about,
Yeah.
you're like, this feels natural to me.
It makes sense to me.
Makes sense to
Yeah.
me. Whereas if you're in a social setting, maybe you have to have small talk, which some people
like what's the
can't
weather?
stand, small talk.
What's the weather like?
Yeah.
You know, what do you do? It's just a bit, you know, but I get it. We are all here in the 3D world, you know. I try to do it as well as I can, but I just know myself a bit better now. But
that's exactly where I wanted to take this.
Yeah.
The human experience.
there's
Because I want to jump into your brain for a minute.
David says I'm an alien, so I'm not sure I am a human, but we can try.
You probably that song has just come into my head. I'm in love with an alien.
Is that a song?
Yes, I'm going to play it for you
feels
after
good.
this. It is
Yeah.
such a good song.
It must be about me.
But you're a spiritual person, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I think when you're very spiritual, I am too, you
Mm-hmm.
can get caught up in this whole different dimension of frequency, right?
Yeah. Well, we don't want to have a psychotic break, so
Yeah,
we don't
right.
want to go too deep in the hole. So we've got to stay a
So you've
little
got
bit.
to remember that. And
Yeah.
you said it. We're here for the 3D experience, right? So how do we balance those two worlds? And what is the human experience in your eyes?
Yeah.
What are we here for?
Well, I guess, like you mentioned, your dharma, but also for me, what I have noticed with my work is a lot of people want to escape the human experience. And when you finally realize that it's not something to escape, it's something to be in, you know, that's a helpful thing. You know, even with this work, everyone wants the transformational experience, like where it's bliss and peaceful and happy, and they want to stay there where they feel connected to one and everyone, and, you know, they have these beautiful experiences because they're very gratifying. But the experiences that they don't love having are the ones where you have to feel more, where they might, you know, have some difficult emotions come up. They might have to, you know, push and pull the tension parts in their body, and then that's not as fun, you know. So I'd say a lot of people associate that with being human, the hard parts. But it's pretty cool what we get to do in these funny little meat bodies. I don't think too much about it, or I'll go
These
insane.
meat bodies. I
Yeah,
love
don't you think it's
that
weird?
reference.
Like, what is this? Like, if I think too much about it, I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, you know, even when you walk on the earth and everyone says it's not flat, it feels flat. No, it's not. But like little things like that, I'm like, why are we here? What are the stars doing? What are the
theories out there
I
that it
don't
is
know.
flat?
What is the planets? Like, did they go to the moon? Like, oh, who are you? Who am I? Like, I can't think too much about it because I'll just go into a hole. So I think balance is the
True.
key.
Like you can just go too far with it, and
Yeah.
then
Gotta stay here.
you think everyone else is below you, and
Yeah, that's not good.
The whole world is ridiculous, and then you probably end up dying, go back up to where you've
come
come
back
from.
again.
And, why didn't I just take advantage of the
Devastated.
fun that I should have been having back down on earth in the meat body?
100%, and it can be fun. You know, life's not always easy. I don't think it's meant to be. I haven't had an easy life, and I'm sure you haven't either. But, you know, I don't have to make sense of everything. Not everything's sensical, and some of the best things in life aren't sensical. So, I know
Like
that more than
Spinal
anyone.
Energetics, right?
Yeah, like you're trying to bridge both like the esoteric and the logical. It's not a simple task. Yeah, I feel like I kind of can shift both into both of those worlds. So yeah, Spinal Energetics is essentially a 3D, 5D experience as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
When do you feel most alive?
Oh,
We didn't come here for the small
I
questions.
don't know. Ritza? That's a big question right now. When do I feel most alive? Probably doing really simple stuff. Like my favorite things to do is like have a bath, walk my dog, play with my cats, have a cup of tea or a chai, spend time with friends. Like I like creative things. My brother's an artist. So I love things like that. I love reading. I love learning. Learning probably is one of my most favorite things to do as a human. I just can't get enough of it. I just love to learn.
What are you curious about at the moment?
I'm doing my master's in Buddhism currently. Wow. I'm doing my master's in Chinese medicine at the same time, but I'm going to defer that because it's just too hard to do 2 masters at once.
2 at once.
How funny is that?
Okay, we're doing 2 at once.
Yeah, that was a silly idea, and with my work schedule. So that was kind of funny. But hopefully I passed the Chinese med one to defer. But the Buddhism one I'm really loving, and I'm doing well in that because I'm looking at predominantly like palliative care and how we could bring in Buddhist perspective into our Western systems in terms of being able to support people when they leave this planet. So I've always been very interested in illness, death, health, and how we can learn from like different belief systems, different values. If you're not scared of death, how can that change your experience when you die? Like we're all going to die. So if you can bring that comfort, which really comes from that Buddhist or Eastern perspective for people, whether they're that religion or not, is something I'm very interested in currently. So that's where my curiosity is. I'm also doing an assignment on euthanasia at the moment with like the ethics behind that in terms of Buddhist ethics and Western perspective. So that kind of thing I'm really interested in, which sounds a bit morbid, but I'm very interested in death.
That's why you're friends with David the medium.
Yeah, it's true. I just find it fascinating that 1 minute you're here and then the next you're not.
Yeah, and then where do we go?
Like, what is that? I think I sent David a message the other day going, is heaven real, David? I don't know. Like,
what did he say?
He said it's not actually. Not in the figment in which we believe it to be.
Okay,
like there's
so
not
where
like
do
a
we go?
good place and a bad place. I haven't got into that yet.
Okay,
so
well, we need to get him back on. He just left. We need to get him back on.
But your soul's going somewhere. I believe in soul, definitely. And I've even with spinal, what we're doing, it wouldn't work on a dead person. So we're essentially working on life force, which is breath. So what is that? And why is it in us? And then why is there a soul attached to it? So I could be here all day asking these questions that I don't know the answers to, but those kind of things are something that I've always been interested in, even since a young age. My mum was like, what is wrong with this kid? I'd be like 3 going, why are we here?
Yeah. Curious.
Just curious. And especially to questions that are difficult to answer. There's a lot of nuances to them. So that's how my brain works, unfortunately. It's like having 3,000 tabs open at once. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes not.
How do you chill out? You do your book, your reading and your bath and stuff. But do you meditate? Do you have?
I used to be very big
like
into meditation. Yep. I'm not at the moment. I think you go through phases.
I'm definitely not doing it at the moment.
I'm in a non-phase, which explains a lot. I'm in a non-phase, but I was really into Vipassanas at one point. So, but the last time I went to a Vipassana, I got divorced after. So a bit nervous about going back.
And into plant medicine journeys as well. And they come out and they're like, oh, this is not for me. I'm out.
Well, I think the soul essentially likes to be alone. I don't think the soul necessarily needs anyone, and a lot of the things that we need to do in our journey, it requires some form of solitude, which is difficult to get in a relationship. So it does happen quite a bit. So does psychosis.
So did you come out of that Vipassana and say, okay, this isn't for me anymore?
Yeah, which is quite scary. I still agree with the decision.
Before that, you felt fine in the relationship?
Fine enough to not really question it to that point.
Interesting.
But you just have these, when you sit with yourself for that long and in that much quiet, you get to know yourself very quickly. A lot of the issue that we have now, and even I have it, so it's not a judgment, is I'll distract myself by learning, or I'll distract myself by reading. Like I can't read fiction. It has to be a book about something. I'm reading
where you're learning.
Yeah. I'm reading a book at the moment about natural killer cell leukemia. Very, very interesting. Biography, but not necessarily a light read. But I find that relaxing. But I'd like to get into my meditation more, because I did notice that I felt more connected to myself. Whereas at the moment, currently, I'm on such a busy schedule. I'm finding I'm avoiding that time to do that. I just want to distract and watch maths.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Like they say, the ones who need to meditate, we need to meditate when we're the busiest, and that's the
100%.
time when we can't find.
I agree. Well, there's no such thing. I just don't want to do it.
Yes,
which I'm aware of.
Things to do.
Yeah, I don't want to look at myself right now. I've done that. I'm not in the place to do that. I don't have the energy to do that right now. So I'll get back there. I'm aware. But yeah, right now I kind of just being a bit more we were just watching Married at First Sight finale. I'm a bit behind, but that's okay. In the UK, I was just there. I just got back last week. You couldn't watch 9 now, so it's
damn it,
because I was supposed to be on this season.
Were you?
Yeah.
But I said now I would have watched it.
But I said no. I said no last minute, and they said I was very difficult to match, which I'm shocked at.
That's rubbish.
How dare they?
That's rubbish. I could match you.
I just watched the episode where they had all these other matches.
I'm a really good matchmaker. Don't worry about that show. I'll find you someone.
Last time, I was in Brisbane. I was for that, but it just was fun. Like, so I like to have fun sometimes, and I was like, I'm too nervous to go on that because of what I do for a living. Like, a lot of people wouldn't understand that, and I'm probably a bit introverted than that.
Well, I mean, do you get this flack of what you do, and do you get that flack on social media?
All the time.
People calling you names?
All the time.
What do they call you?
What did I get called the other day? I got told that I'm a devil worshipper the other day.
Right.
What else? I get a lot about my physical appearance, so the way I look really gets, so that was hard at the start. Like, I had a guy do like a whole bunch of video series on what I looked like, and he would like dissect everything, like even the clothes I'm wearing and where they're from, and like and they went viral, so that was quite challenging at the start.
And you're like, this has actually got nothing to do with the healing work that I'm bringing to the world.
It was very strange. But I think he lived at home in his mum's house in the basement, so that made sense. It looked like that, at least from his videos.
Frightening.
But it's always someone like that. It's never, someone I admire necessarily.
And do you have a thick enough skin to not let that bother you?
I do now, but at the start it was a bit of a challenge because everyone, like, when you birth something, like, you want everyone to like it. Like, look what I created. It's like, when you have a kid and they like, look at the dance I've made up, and you're like, what is this? But you have to go, yay, like, that's what I wanted. But it's I do know I'm intelligent enough to understand what it is. So do you know what I mean? So it's okay. But had I known what I know now, I don't know if I would have been as free with it at the start. So it's probably a good thing I didn't think that anyone would judge me for it. Bit silly, but here we are.
Because you're a good person, you're like, surely everyone else out there is a good person. Why would they do this?
Well, I just thought if they didn't like it, they'd scroll on.
Correct.
But no, that's not life.
The case. Yeah.
But it's gotten me to where I am. I think I was, at the time when I was posting this stuff on social media, it wasn't really out there, things like this, these kind of cathartic releases and seeing people kind of trauma shake and things like that. It was kind of new back then, even though like Donnie Epstein and, Pi from Inner Dance and all these other incredible teachers have seen this for a long time from like, I think they've been around since at least the 80s, but it wasn't shown in a social media perspective. So I was one of the first to do that. So I think that's also why whenever you're pioneering something, doing something different, people are going to have a thought on it. So right. I just had to retrain myself into knowing that was a good thing rather than a bad thing. Like, I'm doing something good, or they wouldn't say anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be the light and the dark, right?
Yeah.
I heard you say the trauma shake. Did you just call it the trauma shake? And this is what I've heard you say, dogs do this innately, right?
Yeah.
Dogs, birds, ducks.
I say little animals.
All those little animals, they're just like shaking it off.
Yeah.
And this is what you're sort of teaching in your own way and bringing in. It's like, let's release that.
Well, animals don't have embarrassment, number one. So they're not societally constructed into what looks weird or what doesn't. They just do what feels natural. And I believe that we have that feeling within us as well. And this is just rekindling or remembering that feeling that's already within us.
I mean, you do sometimes as a human being have that. You get those chills down your spine.
You can.
You walk past someone dodgy and you're just like, oh, no, I didn't get a good vibe there.
We're just not connected as much in that way. And that's just not our society. That's just, in India and, other places like even Bali, like it's not seen as strange as what it is here in the West either when you see movements like that. Energy is part of like the Indian culture, for example. They're taught about that from a very young age, like even namaste, like I see the light in you, that's something that makes sense to them from the minute they're out. And even India is such a polarizing place with so many dualities that things just, they can understand extremes, I guess.
Sarah, based on the title of the podcast, and this is my wrap-up question for today, because I've absolutely loved everything that you've shared. I honestly could talk to you for hours. And you are one of the most interesting people I've ever met, that's for sure. But what is something that you once heard that you couldn't unhear and that really stuck with you in your life? Made you see things a little differently?
I guess for me, to bring it back to kind of what we're talking about, was the first time I felt energy in my body. Like as soon as I felt it, it was actually with the network chiro at the time. She touched me on my sacrum, which is nowhere near my calf for those listening at home. And my calf just started like an electrical kind of feeling going up my leg, and I'll never forget it. And once I felt that, I just said to myself, like, I need to know what this is, and I need to dedicate my life to whatever that is. And I've been following that ever since, and it's brought me to where I am, and that feeling, that tangible feeling, is something that I want everyone to be able to experience in their life, and just so that it does something when you feel it. It makes you realize you're everything and nothing all at once. It just does something very special that's what I want for everyone.
You followed the breadcrumbs.
You do. Sometimes they're going to some dodgy areas, I'll be honest. I've followed them into some strange places. But they were there for some reason. So, I have peace with that as well. Like I do trust that there's some kind of guidance going on. I don't know what it is, but I trust that things happen as they're supposed to, whether they're good or bad things.
And that's a great way to go into life, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, Sarah.
You.
I am pumped to experience what you bring to the world, the Kylo Summit this weekend. And I appreciate you being with me and being here today, sharing all of that knowledge. Oh my God, there's so much going on in that brain of yours. I'm like, how is there possibly more knowledge?
Doesn't sound very peaceful in there, does it?
No, it doesn't, but it sounds very smart. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
For today.
So good to see you.
You too.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.